Welcome everybody to this bite-sized session, number one in the conference today. My name's Tony Woods. I'm the Group Technical Manager for LHC, and I'm going to take you on a discussion on housing net zero carbon by 2030. I thought it's quite a large topic, so I guess to get us in the mood, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, as a great man once said. So what are those steps and where are we at the moment? If we look at the European survey on buildings for the UK, 76% of all the buildings are residential, 23% are non-residential. And you can see the breakdown in the non-residential, that wholesale and retail are one of the largest areas. Then we've got education and private offices. So when we're heading to net zero carbon, we can see that residential housing is going to be one of the key areas that we need to look at if we're going to get to the target by 2030. Housing stock in the UK, give you an idea of the magnitude of the problem, is we've got 27 million houses in the UK, which is quite a lot, and our housing stock is actually much older than the rest of Europe. So currently, as I said, 27 million houses in the UK. The government's target of building 300,000 houses a year means that by 2050, we'll have an extra 9 million houses built, which there leads on to the fact that 75% of our housing stock will already be in place by 2050. So I guess the key thing from my point of view is that we should be moving to net zero carbon for all those new houses we're building now, because this will be an extra 1.5 million houses that we might have to do additional measures on to actually bring them up to the standards we need by 2050. One of the interesting items is the London Design Guide has been pushing for net zero carbon since 2016. However, the future home standard proposed by the government is actually going to be to a lower level and take longer for us to achieve the net zero carbon. And for those of you old enough to remember the Code for Sustainable Homes, that was a trajectory set in 2006, which meant by 2016 all new housing should have been net zero carbon by 2016, and obviously that was curtailed in the cutting of red tape in 2015, so it's actually been pushed back by another 10 years. So what's been going on then? These first steps, energy efficiency band ratings have steadily been increasing over the last 10 years. We can see here with some of the work that's been done so far, but where has this been carried out? Cavity wall insulation is one of the main areas, and loft insulation, I guess the low-hanging fruit from that point of view. A lot of that has been via eco-funding, where the energy companies are trying to address their obligations. We're still waiting to see what happens with the future of that, because no real program has come out from there. But you can see over more recent years that the amount of insulation that's going into buildings has been reducing quite considerably as the funding streams have been reduced. What types of wall insulation have we got? You can see cavity wall insulation. Most housing now, probably 2/3 of it, have insulation, but it's the solid walls where we have the problem. We don't have much insulation going on there. And again, for the previous slide, looking at those low-hanging fruits that the energy companies have picked up on, the easy wins, the quick wins we've done. But again, over the last few years, we've been slowing down on that. I touched on earlier saying that our housing stock is quite old. Looking at the English housing survey, you can see a large proportion of our housing is very old. And one of the questions will be, is how do we improve the energy rating of these buildings? We've got a different task to the rest of Europe due to the age of our housing stock, the way it's been built, the range of construction methods we've used, and how we can actually achieve these requirements. So if we look at the advancing to net zero carbon, the aims are by 2030, all new buildings must be net zero carbon. So that will include non-residential buildings as well. But we're looking at the key principles. We're looking at the measurement of and disclosure of how much carbon the buildings are using. Step 2, reducing the energy demand. Now, this is a critical one. If we switch to renewable energy measures, that's great. But have we got the capacity in the grid to actually deliver the energy we need if we don't improve the energy performance of the buildings we have? Also, in line with that, you've got things like electric vehicles coming on stream at the same time as we're trying to move away from things like gas. So it's going to put a greater strain on the grid for supplying electricity. So we need to do as much as we can to be able to balance that out, to protect it and make sure we can actually deliver what is required. And as we said, renewable energies are an important part. Can we include renewable energies on individual buildings and increase the amount of renewable energies we have? And then looking at the verification of that. So there's much that needs to be done, and we need to move down this process together. So if we look at London, London's target is to be carbon neutral by 2030. There's 3.5 million houses in London, and they produce around about a third of the greenhouse gas within London. And London has committed to become a net zero carbon city. There is a program going on, retrofit acceleration, for 1,600 homes over the next 3 years, looking at building up the supply chain. However, if we look at 3.5 million houses, need to be brought up to standards by 2030, that's nearly 1,000 houses per day for the next 10 years. And that's 365 days per year. We're expected 1,000 houses to be done. And the rest of the UK, to bring them up to standard, they're looking at something like 5,500 houses per day to get them there by 2050. So there's going to be a massive demand, both for labour and materials and technology, to be able to deliver these requirements. And when you look at the retrofit acceleration project, you know, that's equivalent to, over 3 years, equivalent of 2 days worth of requirements where we need to be if we're going to bring housing up to the required standard. So the issues: funding. How are we going to actually fund this? Insulation. We touched on this: cavity, external wall. There's many different types, and we'll need different types of insulation to be able to achieve what's required. Windows should be using triple glazed windows from now. Things like thermal bridging. Low energy buildings, you can lose 50% of the heat loss is through thermal bridging rather from the building elements. Air tightness. As we improve the air tightness of buildings, we've got issues with ventilation, moisture. Can we get it out of the building? Renewable energies, batteries, systems and PVs, can we link those together? Can we put more of those in properties? The key one with heating is the government is aiming to move away from gas, but do we have the capacity in the system to deliver heating by other methods, whether that's heat pump, district heating systems, electric heating? We've got all these issues. And then building energy management systems. Can we be smarter in how we do this? We need joined up thinking. We need to be able to, as you've seen with the enormity of the task, we need to be able to look at it and say, everything we do from today onwards, how does that impact our target to reach carbon neutral by 2030? Every piece of work we do on a property, we should be thinking about how we get there. And I guess to finish off, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking down your complex, overwhelming task into a small, manageable task and starting on the first one. So I think that's a good analogy from Mark Twain as how we need to approach this. I think we have a minute or two if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask me at the end of this presentation. And you can use the question box at the top of the screen. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time. It's been a brief, bite-sized presentation to you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.